Hi, I'm Lenora. I'm the creator of The Bitchy Bookkeeper.
Hi, I'm Kristen Tetzi, author of The Age of the Child.
Hi, I'm Isabel, founder and firebrand of the Operation Spark, and we are the three founding non-mothers of Childfree Girls. In today's episode, we're going to discuss pronatalism.
Yay!
Yay! You know, the one thing that Childfree people absolutely love. So, before we get started into the subject, I think it's important to define just a short definition of what pronatalism is, just in case you haven't heard this word before. So I'm just reading off the Wikipedia, easy. Pronatalism is a belief that promotes the reproduction of human life. The term comes from the Latin, that doesn't matter, but anyway, it promotes childbearing and parenthood as desirable for social reasons and to ensure the continuance of humanity.
Apparently they were doing that way back in the days of Latin.
Probably, yeah. I think it makes sense. Back then, they really had to populate the world. Now,
They really did.
Not so much. So I want to ask you girls, what is it about pronatalism that you don't like?
I don't have a problem with the continuation of human life. There are some people that seem to think that child-free automatically equals antinatalism, which is so not the case. Like, none of us are antinatalists, like 100% wise anyway. My biggest thing that I can think of off the top of my head is when someone says that babies give you hope. And my thing is, when does that child stop giving you hope? Like, why is it that a teenager or an adult or us, because I fully believe that all of us, whatever age we're at, we should still be seen as hope, because we're still developing. There's so many things that we individually can do for the betterment of humanity. So when someone says, in the context of, oh, you should have a baby, they give you so much hope. Like, babies are, you know what I'm talking about? But when does that stop for that child? And then it's like they need another baby because they need to make more hope. And like, shouldn't there be hope? We should just be living in like the most massive, hopeful world, universe, because there's been so many babies. I don't understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of hope walking around.
Or crawling around. Yep.
But when does someone stop seeing that child as hopeful? And then why is it just a baby that's the only thing that can bring hope? That is something I take issue with.
It's the same moment their life stops to mattering, and that's as soon as they exit the vagina.
Yeah, I would ask, hope for what? This is we had this conversation in our chat a few days ago. And it's true. Babies give hope. That's what people say, but hope for what?
Yeah, because a baby's not going to cure cancer or is not going to solve or create anything useful yet. We've seen child prodigies, and there are many smart children and people that grow up to be really smart adults, but they're not seen as hopeful as a not even a newborn, but like a fetus, essentially, based on what Chris is saying.
Hope. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess so maybe is it an individual thing? Like, if a person is going through a hard time, this potential child is going to give them hope for themselves personally, not necessarily the world then.
Well, you know how people will say that every morning is a new day. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have the whole day ahead of you, anything can happen. I think maybe babies are that new day. People see having a baby as, oh, this is unreal, unformed potential, and so this baby and all the babies that grow up in this generation of babies can do stuff. They can be bundles of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and people who create things and invent things.
But then they never follow through with that, because it's like, after a certain age, it's like, oh well, when are you, this baby, gonna have kids? Because that's gonna bring more hope. It's not what can you do. I've mentioned that cycle before. It's just silly, but that's what annoys me. Yeah. I guess unless you're a male child, because then you can be Bill Gates. Like the men can go off and do whatever. But if you're female, your hope is to breed more hope.
You can be Billy Gates and nowadays, can't you?
Yeah, nowadays, yeah. that reminds me, I saw this documentary on Warren Buffett. I think it was on HBO. And he mentioned something. He was talking about his sisters and comparing his sisters' lives to his life. And he was saying how, you know, it's half of the world's population, referring to women, you know, we haven't, that's an untapped resource, because he saw the lives that his, you know, in his generation, that his sisters were expected to live, where he had the freedom to do whatever and be whatever he wanted without the expectation. I mean, he had a family, but that was not the expectation placed on him. And he was just comparing the life that he had to his sisters' lives, and it was just an interesting, and I love when I see men of that generation acknowledge that. I think it's awesome. That's kind of just a side note, but
yeah, I mean, I think it's common for that generation, I guess, for women to have had a lot less opportunities and resources, and just in general, just be a lot more prejudiced against than nowadays. I think times are changing, maybe not as fast as we would want them to, because we still see, I mean, we still hear in the news about women being treated as objects, or women being paid 80 cents on the dollar for whatever a man earns in the same position. But I think that times are definitely changing. And we kind of like went off topic there, but I think it's important to say, you know what, if you're a young woman listening to this or watching us on YouTube, you can definitely be a Billy Gates.
Except you don't want to be a Billy Gates. You want to be you.
Exactly.
You want to be,
yes.
Exactly. There are so many. One of the problems with all this eternal hope that people are bringing into the world is that the young hope out there is, you know, they see other people doing inventive things and succeeding, and then they try to copy those inventive things, like girls trying to be Kim Kardashian, people trying to be like rockers used to try to be Marilyn Manson. And what they're not getting is that those people are who they are because they were completely themselves, except for Lady Gaga, who's trying to be Madonna.
But it's Madonna adjacent.
Yeah. So she did a good job at that. But generally, like, if people always say be your best self, and that sounds so trite, but it's so true, because trying to be someone else doesn't work. They already did that, and that's why they are where they are. You have to find your own thing. Just be your own self, because you're fabulous just the way you are.
And I think that's like the best way that you can hope for something, not, you know, bringing a baby into this world to bring you or your family or just the population in general hope, but to hope for you to be the most authentic version of yourself and thrive.
And hopefully that child is in a setting or has the wherewithal to become the best version of themselves too. But that's not always supported. I mean, I don't think, I mean, that's a big societal flaw, is we're not taught that. We're not taught that in school. We all kind of learn the same thing. You know, it's all around us. We see the uniform way of living, which is why so many of us have assumed that the next logical step is to get married, have kids, without even thinking about it, because we just see that everywhere. It's promoted everywhere. Yeah, we're definitely in a pronatalist world.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? What do you dislike the most about prenatalism?
I dislike that it has us existing in a place where it makes sense to say things like, I don't care if you don't want kids. I don't care if you do want kids. Just do whatever you want, and it's totally fine. Because I don't agree with that at all. I agree that it's totally fine to not want kids, but for people to say, hey, whatever you want, if you want kids, have them, do you. That's, Hillary Clinton had this whole "it takes a village to raise a child" thing. And we can't be the village raising the children on one hand and not be the village trying to prevent people who shouldn't have children from bringing them in on the other. You know, it's considered so acceptable to tell people to have children, but it's very unacceptable to tell them not to, even when telling them not to could mean we have fewer of them coming into situations where they aren't in an environment where they can be their best selves or even be remotely happy or eat. That's kind of one of the premises, the major premise of the age of the child, is that we're not thinking about where these kids are coming into. We're just saying, have them, have them, have them, spit them out, spit them out. Who cares where they go or where they end up? There's a character in The Age of the Child, briefly, who he finds food, he like takes food off dishes in the dishwasher because his parents have a padlock on their refrigerator. Parents have actually done that. They actually starve their children. They can't, not all of them, but I'm just saying, it's responsible to say, maybe you shouldn't have kids. It's responsible to have the conversation shift completely from everyone should have kids to not everyone should have kids. That it's the norm that pronatalism makes everyone think they can have kids, they should have kids, while simultaneously holding it up on high as the most important job in the world, the hardest job in the world. Those things don't work together. And it's not like people get training for parenthood, you know?
Have you ever met a couple who had a child and they shouldn't have?
Yes. Yes.
And
I'll get back to you on that one. Let me formulate my thought in a nice way.
Kristen?
I have a friend who, I have never met people personally who have kids and who shouldn't have, but a friend of mine was telling me about a woman she knew who had a kid and they just fed him candy or Doritos. Like that was what he ate. It's just abuse. It's nutritional abuse. He's going to grow up like completely malnourished. It's horrifying. And they would like yell about him all the time and fight about him and over him, and not over him in a I love him more than you love him kind of way, but in a he ruined my life kind of way.
So I know people like who are adults now. Like I didn't know these people when they were children, but I know them now as adults. Knowing the kind of parents they had, the kind of homes they came from, a few have turned out to be pretty good because that affected them in a way that they were able to they were able to it gave them motivation to live a life that they wanted. And one had children and did her best to give them the kind of home that she wished that she had. And those kids have turned out fairly decent. And on the other flip side, there are some that have never recovered from that kind of childhood. I may or may not be speaking about relatives. Like, a couple distant cousin type of thing. But yes, there have been some that have not turned out so great and have not been able to figure out a way to survive or survive, yes, but not thrive in this world. And, they're my age or slightly older. So yeah, it's the generational trauma thing. I mean, that's not something that's ever addressed anywhere. It's something that we all kind of have to discover on our own as we start, figuring ourselves out or starting to, I think you get to a certain age, or at least I did, where I start to go, wait a sec, why do I feel this anger? Like, why do I feel this way? Like personally, I feel fine, but I'm feeling this energy. Where's it coming from? And then it kind of leads to an investigation. Like for me, it meant talking to family members and asking them questions about, ancestral history and whatever they could tell me. And that kind of answered some questions, but that's not something that we're taught growing up that exists. And I think that would be really helpful because at least, and this is something I tell my nephews, as they got older, they'd start talking to me about sometimes they feel angry or they feel this way or that way. And I wouldn't give them a whole long spiel of, well, your great grandfather on this side had this issue. And that's why, it wasn't like that. I was kind of like, well, yeah, I feel that way too. I know your dad feels that way. And this is what we do to, to deal with it. And it's not your fault that you feel this way. However you talk to a kid at whatever age they're, I've made sure to point that out to them, because that's something that would be so helpful to me, if I were younger. But it's not something that's talked about ever.
Well, neither like pronatalism doesn't either take into account the individual. I mean, just on a micro level. Like if you, my mother said once, well, I think she read The Age of the Child, and she disagreed that anybody would abandon their children that way. I don't know where she got that idea. I mean, the whole safe haven law is a place where you can deposit your children you don't want. She said that the number of abused children wasn't, whatever, it's a very small amount of abused kids. So, okay, so you can think that way. You can say, well, there are more unabused kids than there are abused kids, but that's putting them into a statistical, chart. But if you take and look at one individual abused child and see what they go through, and imagine what it would be like to, or even mistreated or whatever. You have these people who brought you into the world because we live in this society that tells them everybody could and should bring them into the world. And it doesn't matter if you don't have the money, doesn't matter if you're completely unfit. And I'm not saying that children should only be for people who have a ton of money. I'm saying you should be able to provide for your child. It's unfair, but that's life. Suck it up. Take the individual child living with people who are supposed to care for them. You look up to these people who are supposed to love you and protect you, and they are looking down at you with hatred. Their hand is coming across your face. They're making you feel like you're worthless. And then your whole life is that. Your whole life is coming from that initial, very, very important experience in your first couple of years and on. And the people who are supposed to love you are showing you that they don't. And then that affects all of your relationships with other people. I mean, so your whole life that you were brought into is a awful experience. And I'm sure there are good parts and you find happiness in other places, but it's just it's so sad to me that a brand new person, that people cavalierly invite brand new people, brand new vulnerable people with potential for so much happiness and love, and give no shits about how they're treated. It's infuriating.
Yeah, I've met several people who shouldn't be parents, but this is the thing, and this is the scary thing. I don't think I'd realized that until after they have the child. In most cases, like I would see them maybe before they have the kid, and normal people, maybe, yeah. I mean, whatever. How are you going to judge that? That's the difficult thing. And then the kid comes along, and it's a fucking shit show. And I feel bad for those kids. And most of those kids are already adults today, and they're all completely fucked up. Like, and it is that, that pressure of, you have to have children. You have to have children. Doesn't matter how you're going to look. Like, don't worry. Like, I was telling you guys about this the other day. There's this saying in Latin America in general, and it's the baby comes with a loaf of bread under the arm, which basically means, God will provide. Have the child. It'll be fine. And that lack of planning, it's a gamble with another human being. It shouldn't be. Like, if that lack of planning is what you're going to have for dinner, that's fine. But we're talking about another human life.
And there's that assumption also that people like to throw out at the child-free community that, oh, well, I became a better person once my child showed up. So is that the thing? You're mentioning the ones that beforehand shouldn't have had kids. Maybe they went in with the assumption, or I don't know, but that society would say, oh, but they will change they will change once the child is here.
It's like it's like they've never seen a selfish parent before, or those stories about parents who, like those mom bullies who get online and bully the enemies of their daughters. Those, yeah, right, no selfish parents, no awful people who have kids. Crazy.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the comment that we received today on our YouTube channel, and I actually got really angry. I always get very angry when people say to me, you're never going to know true love. Like, what do you know about what I know about love? And yes, I will certainly never know what the love of being a mother is, or love towards a child of mine, because I don't want one. But that doesn't mean that I don't know true love. Like, who are you to tell me what true love is? You know, like that. I find that disgusting, because it's shaming, and it is how do you say that? It's like to manipulate you in a way. It's like, oh,
Yeah, it's
I
totally
want to find true
manipulative.
love, have a kid.
Yeah.
What?
eHarmony doesn't promote it like that. Just a quick question. Have either of your guys' parents ever said to you, you won't know true love until you have a child?
No.
Have just out of curiosity.
No.
Me neither. Never heard that. I've never heard that once from my friends or close family members. Anyone that's a parent that anyone within in my circle that's willingly had children, and my brother who accidentally became a parent. Like, no one's ever said that to me in my circle. It's just some outward random stranger that has commented that I've ever heard that from. And we hear it a lot, but never anyone close.
It pisses me off. My parents have said to me, the love that a parent has for a child is something different than anything that you could experience. I've heard that, but it doesn't, they never said to me, it's the best thing in the world, and like, you're missing out on something that is fucking amazing. No, I mean, it's just a different thing. But just like I don't want to go, I don't want to go parachuting because I fucking hate heights. If people say, oh, it's the best thrill in the world, you really have to do it. I mean, sorry, but no. It's the
like
same
trying pasta.
Like trying pasta.
Eating pasta.
Yeah. Same thing with a child. I mean, it could be that's your experience, and I completely respect that. It doesn't mean that I want to go through that just to be able to experience it, because there's a lot more that comes with it. It's not about just having the child and being, oh, yes, I love it, and that's it. It's a lot more than that, and I don't know.
It's a lot more than falling asleep in front of the TV with your child on your chest.
Yes.
If anyone's following our YouTube comments, you'll know what we're talking about there, or even our Instagram for that matter.
Yeah.
I think what really pisses me off to the same degree is probably people who say, I'm so sorry for you and what you're missing out on. But it bothers me because, and I don't know if it's also this element that bothers you, Isabel, but it's the disingenuousness of it. It's the lie of it, because you don't, let's say I see someone on the street who's homeless. I'm not going to walk up to this person and say, oh, I feel so sorry for you that you don't have more money. Oh, you must have a shit life. Who the hell would say that if you actually felt sorry for somebody? If you really, truly love your experience of parenting so much that it just devastates you to think other people are missing out on it, you stay quiet. You wouldn't want to try to make someone feel bad. So if you're saying you feel sorry for somebody for not knowing your experience, not only are you a lying liar, I don't know, there's something malicious in there, and you should probably explore that and get to the bottom of it and fix it.
Yeah, I agree. Either that or, ooh, I feel sad for you. No, you don't. You don't feel sad for me.
No.
Yeah, it's like they just want a reaction, and that's such a good, is that analogy? The homeless person thing, like, oh God, I mean, that would just be psychotic. I don't know, this is ridiculous. Like,
yeah,
exactly. I mean,
exactly that. I mean, you wouldn't do that. Nobody would.
No, wouldn't even cross my mind to do that. I mean, it's just, oh. But those are the people, though, that they grab my curiosity so much, because I would love to take a peek inside their not their brain, but just their whole well-being while they're at home. Okay, so at the beginning of me discovering the child-free community, I started to become more familiar with the childless community, like the infertility community, and reading some people's stories and just kind of like watching or seeing their posts, reading the captions, and that opened my eyes to the mindset of someone who did want to have children and couldn't for whatever reason, and now they're building their life as a child-free person, because it's a different experience than for those of us that never wanted children. And I remember at first I was kind of not sure how I felt. They would portray, some of these accounts would portray reading some of the stories, and for me, my viewpoint is like, you don't have to have kids, like that's exciting, but just kind of putting myself, taking my experience out of it and just reading it for what it was and starting to understand their stories. But never did it cross my mind where I want to like type out and say, oh, I'm so sorry that you're so sad that you can't have a child. Like, for me, my thought and my vibe towards that person is like, okay, I want you to find peace and enjoy your life as a child-free person. However you get there, that's your journey, and I will respect however long it takes you to get there. But my honest to God hope is that you genuinely build a life without children that you enjoy, and that brings you peace from, because it'll be different than what you may have imagined in your life. And that's fine. But so to come at somebody, like, I don't know, it's just weird. I don't understand it. It's just, for me, it just screams complete insecurity. And lately it's been men commenting on our account, like dads that are so happy. It's mind-boggling.
Well, I wonder how many men are pressured into fatherhood,
I think a lot.
I
think a lot. I really, really wish, I've told you guys this off camera, and I know it's not the time, it's not my story to tell, but I wish I could tell you about my brother's experience.
Well,
and that's not something I don't think he'll talk about publicly because there are kids involved, but it's just not to bash women, but some of the things that women do in order to
trap a man.
Yeah, not even that, just to get out of certain situations by getting themselves pregnant without telling the other person. Like,
I researched that stuff for a blog post I wrote a while ago on Medium. There was one woman who had protected sex with a guy with a condom. But then when they were done, she left with the condom and inseminated herself with it. And then he gets to pay child support now.
I've heard that story.
I've heard that too. I heard some rapper or whatever, he was saying that, or I think he was on the Howard Stern show. I can't remember who it was, but he was like telling guys out there, like, take your condoms with you for that reason, especially when you got money and they're after your, child support.
I know a lot of guys who do that. Like, they will make sure that they're the ones who dispose of it, and they like put it down flush it down. Because of that, because that has happened more than once.
Wow.
And more guys should take more control of whether they produce children. I don't want to say they put the responsibility on women. I mean, I think it's a privilege to be able to decide whether you want to use birth control. I mean, no one's burdening you with it. If you do not want a child, you use birth control, whether you're a man or a woman or anything in between. If you have reproduction capabilities and you do not want a child, protect yourself. Don't rely on anyone else to do it. It's no one else's job but yours.
Totally agree with that.
Absolutely. I want to comment on what annoys me or just enrages me more about pronatalism, and it is that it's everywhere. It's fucking everywhere. Like, you see it in the movies, you see it on the TV shows, you see it on advertisement, you see it everywhere. And the thing is that because we grow up watching television, looking up to this like Hollywood stars, or, we're just like permeated all the time by it. And it's kind of like Inception in a way. You watch that movie. Yeah. It's like the Inception thing, like have a child, happy families mean that they have children, and having a child is going to make you happy, and it's going to make you rich, and it's going to make you the best cook in the world, and it's going to make you, there's just so many things attached to that we just see on an everyday basis. And that's one thing. And the other thing is public policy, just in general. The fact that in so many countries, there are like financial incentives for people to reproduce, like tax incentives, for example, or even social incentives. It makes, I understand why some governments do it. I get it. But at the same time, I know of women who have had children only to get those tax breaks or only to get help from the government.
But isn't it more expensive to have the child and have to take care of it, even if you get the tax break, because you have to spend all that money?
Depends on which country you live.
Well, I mean, here in Canada, there's no way that the government gives you enough money to make up for the cost of a child. I mean, especially if you factor in university and all that sort of thing. Like,
well, in France it is, because
really,
education's free, healthcare is free, and everything. And so they give up money. And I knew this girl when I was in France, and she was like 28 and she had 5 kids already, because she didn't want to work. So it was easier for her to have children, government to pay her, and not have to move a finger in her life, not work, because she was having all these breaks and all these incentives and whatever. And then her kids would take care of her eventually as well, she thought. And I thought that was a very, I don't even know how to phrase this. What I'm going, my mind is just thinking on expletives. I'm not even going to phrase it, but it's weird because of people who take advantage of it. Like, I don't like it because there are people who take advantage of the system. But also, I get a lot of comments on my Instagram about people saying, oh, we need to defund Planned Parenthood because women shouldn't be getting abortions on taxpayers' money. But taxpayers are also paying for your, all the tax breaks that you're getting, all your child's, whatever thing that the government's giving you because you have a kid, taxpayers are paying for it.
There's also the danger for me as someone who wants to maintain her independence as long as possible. And they say, well, who's going to take care of you when you get older? And the story, Isabel, that you were telling us before we started this episode, if you never, as a female, if you do not know how to take care of yourself, and you get to a certain point, and if you're relying on your kids to look after you because you've never worked or you've never developed skills or you've never experienced taking care of yourself, and you don't have the skill set on how to take care of yourself, I mean, that is very dangerous, even if you have a bunch of kids. I mean, that's just how I view it, as someone that values her independence and values her freedom and values taking care of herself. Not that I don't like to be pampered, and not that I, would be, I mean, we all do want to feel taken care of and protected at some point in our life, for sure. But I've always strongly valued taking care of oneself, or at least having the skill to take care of oneself, because it's important. And nowadays it's changing, especially, where we live anyway. I live in the three of us live in relatively progressive countries. I guess depends on who's in power, depends on the day, I guess. But, like, it's not, we have our freedom, and we can develop skills, and it's not frowned upon generally, it's just that's just such a dangerous mentality. And I don't think it's been helpful to anybody personally.
Yeah. In my country,
maybe short term, but
in my country, it's still very common for women to have children, thinking that they're going to be like a bank, or, not only financial resource, but also taking care of them or doing things for them. If their husband doesn't take care of them, then their kids should, right? So that's still like in the mind of many women, Latin American women in general, I would say.
How does that work for like daughters? If you have daughters, are they expected, or it's like, no, you're going to have your own family? How does that work? To me, it sounds like the men are expected to be the breadwinners. So what if someone doesn't have a son and they only have daughters? No. Are they expecting the daughters to be able to provide for them financially, or the husband of the daughter?
It's very common to see families here. I'm not saying this is the general rule, but it is common to see families where there's one of the eldest daughters never got married because all she did her life was take care of her mom. Like that, her, and she was raised like that in a way. It's actually fairly common. Like, and I completely agree with you. Women should be conscious enough about the fact that they should be leading or just living their life under their own terms and not for somebody else. I completely agree with that, but it is changing. And I know that times 50, 30 years ago, it wasn't the case still. But there are still women who have children in Latin American countries because that's like it's sort of like their insurance in a way.
Yeah, it's like their security.
Not only for their older years when they're like old, like who's going to take care of you when you're old? Watch that episode, by the way. But also like now, and this back to the story that we were talking before we got on air. And just to mention it briefly to the people who are listening to us, we're talking about somebody who's an adult who's taking care of their mother since forever because their mother never worked. So that's a little bit, there's that expectation, but there's also a lot of pressure on that person to take care of their parents, because I don't know if this is pronatalism or if this is more cultural and doesn't happen everywhere, but there's this kind of like belief that you have to like thank your parents for bringing you into this world, right? So I have to thank my parents for bringing me into this world, and I have to thank them for taking care of me when I was a child. Therefore, whatever they ask of me in my adult years, I have to give them to them. And it's so untrue. I mean, for me personally, I feel that is such a big lie. And I have had this conversation with my parents before. And I have told them, I love you guys, but I didn't ask you to be brought into this world. That was your decision. Mm-hmm. Therefore, you should have, because it was your decision, you were responsible for me when I couldn't take care of myself, right? Normal. So like any other responsible parent should do. Now I can take care of myself, but it is not my responsibility to take care of you guys. Mm-hmm. It'll be my decision if ever, but it's not my responsibility. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think that there's a lot of people who don't understand that, especially in Latin American countries. They feel that it is their responsibility and it is their duty to take care of their parents, whether they're already old or not, because they have to thank them because they were brought into this world.
My former stepmom tried to use that, like you owe this because we do this for you, or, you owe your dad this because, he's taking care of you for all this time. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of teenagers who, scream back, I didn't ask to be born. I have nothing to do with that decision. So I think it's probably pretty universal among a certain kind of, parent. But I think it's also part of pronatalism, because it's kind of part of the thing that draws parents in. Well, if you have them, they take care of you. If you have them, you have unconditional love. If you have them, your kids will give you all these things you want at whatever phase of your life you want them.
That's like saying, well, if you get a degree, you'll get a really good job, you'll have a really good life. And we all know that's a bunch of BS too.
Yes, we do.
Not saying don't go to university. I'm just saying,
don't count on it.
Yes, exactly. Again, if you want to have the kid, okay, no, this kind of then is the opposite of what Kristen was saying earlier. Were you saying, yeah, if you want to have the kid, go have the kid, but exercise a degree of caution. Like, are you prepared? I need to stop saying that, because I do completely agree with you, Kristen, in that, just to randomly say, if you want kids, have them. It's like, if you want them, think about it, do some research, get to know, not even just that, it's like, get to know yourself. Because I think the three of us have discussed like how raising children would not be beneficial to like our emotional state. Whether because we don't we need to live alone, or we need to have our space, or there's many reasons why. And I think it's the getting to know yourself takes a long time. So, and once you've had the kid and you realize it's just not suitable for your psyche and your health and all that sort of thing, well, then it's too late, but I think that's the biggest thing, is get to know yourself a bit.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not antinatalist either. All I'm saying is that it shouldn't be everyone should have kids. That shouldn't be the conversation that's out there in the world and on TV. It should be the flip side, which is enjoy your life. Hey, whatever. Oh, kids, yeah, sure, they're an option, but man, that's a really serious one. You should probably think about it. That's all. But that's not the norm. That should be the norm.
Absolutely
Like a face tattoo.
I
You know what?
absolutely
That's the
agree.
thing. If you want to get a face tattoo, get a face tattoo. If you want to smoke cigarettes all day long in your house, go for it. Like if you want to harm yourself, if you want to do anything that affects only you, go for it. I do not care. I will not judge you. You want to have a kid though? I don't know. You should think about it.
Yeah, I think people should be making that decision. That should be making a more informed decision about having children.
Mm-hmm.
And because we've talked about this many times, it's just like mindless reproducing. That's what is happening in this prenatalist world. People just have babies because of the sake of having babies, and not a lot of people are putting real thought into it. So, we just want to ask you guys to think about it a little bit more.
Also acknowledging that some people or some parts of the world, it's just sex education is lacking and contraception is lacking. We do get that too. We're in relatively developed countries. I guess in Kristen's part of the world, they'll find out after the November election.
Yikes.
But you can start the conversation now by not being afraid. If you have a friend who says, I want to have a baby, don't be afraid to say, are you really sure you should have a baby? It's okay to say that, even if it hurts their feelings, because you know what? It's not about them. It's about the baby.
Totally
Protect
agree.
the babies. Protect quality of life. Quality of life is very important.
Well, that is all for this episode. We hope that you guys enjoyed watching us on YouTube or listening to us on any of the podcasts, on any of the platform that carry our podcast. If you want to ask a question, send us a message, tell us whatever you want, just email us. Our email address is childfreegirls@gmail.com, and it's open 24/7.
You can also find us all over social media. We are at Childfree Girls on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Pinterest. And of course, you can always leave comments below. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you are watching us there. That would help us out greatly. And if you want an awesome book to kind of fuel your child-free day, your child-free life, go check us out on Amazon. Childfree Girls, Comfort Food for Thought, available on paperback and on Kindle.
And our question for you this day is, do you also hate pronatalism? If you do, why? Why do you hate pronatalism?
Why? Your comments?
Leave your comments, your answers below, or you can even send us an email.
We also have a website, childfreegirls.com. I forgot to mention that.
Yes. And you can also find all of our contact information there at the site. But yeah, get in touch with us. Tell us if you hate pronatalism, and if you do, why. We don't want to assume you do. Maybe you're totally fine with it. You shouldn't be, but whatever.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. No, you say bye.
No, you say bye.
Oh my God, I'm leaving.
You leave first.
I'm going.
Bye.
Bye.